Ms. Cross.
This is Ashley Nicole Cross, 42 years old, a licensed clinical social worker out of Charlotte, North Carolina, licensed in 5 different states.
FBI, we need to speak with you about your practice.
I work with vulnerable people. I help them.
Are you going to come with us, ma'am?
Am I being arrested?
With a master's degree and over a decade of experience, she built a behavioral health practice from nothing to serve some of the poorest, most vulnerable people in the region. And for 5 years, she used it to steal more than $1.2 million from the government program meant to pay for their care, billing for therapy sessions that never happened, using the names of patients who trusted her and people she'd never even met. When it was over, she'd be convicted on every count and sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison. Disclaimer: this video is a dramatized retelling based on public court records and verified news reporting. All visual portrayals are fictional recreations and do not depict any real person. All charges are confirmed through official court records. Before we go further, how well do you really know the person you trust with your private struggles? The therapist, the counselor, the one you tell the things you don't tell anyone else? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We cover a case like this every single week. To understand how a licensed therapist ends up in handcuffs in her own waiting room, you have to go back before the practice, before the licenses, before any of it. Ashley Nicole Cross came up in the Carolinas in the early 1980s, part of a generation of Black women in the South for whom the helping professions, nursing, teaching, social work, the church, were both a calling and one of the few clear ladders up. These were the careers that carried respect in the community and a steady check. The careers a smart, capable young woman was steered toward by everyone around her. You helped people, and in helping people, you built something stable for yourself. That was the promise. And by every visible sign, she believed it. Because nobody accidentally becomes a licensed clinical social worker. It is not a job you fall into. It is a decade-long climb of degrees and exams and supervised hours. And at every fork where she could have chosen something easier or more lucrative, she chose the helping path instead. She went to North Carolina A&T State University in Greensboro, one of the most respected historically Black universities in the country, and earned a bachelor's degree in social work. Not business, not something with money in it. Social work. Then she went to the University of South Carolina and earned a master's in it. Then she stacked up the licenses. Clinical social work in North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, and Florida, plus an addictions specialist credential on top. 5 states. Years of work. A young woman building, brick by brick, the exact credentials you'd want the person across the room to have when you finally worked up the nerve to ask for help. By 2011, she had her federal provider number, and she was practicing. She worked with children, with families, with people carrying grief and trauma and addiction. In her own words, in her own online profile, she said she believed in building a relationship with her clients based on, and I want you to hold on to this, honesty and frank communication. And she opened her own place, Odyssey Health Group, on North Tryon Street in Charlotte. She enrolled it with South Carolina Medicaid, because Charlotte sits close enough to the state line that South Carolina's poorest residents could come to her and have their care covered. The people who walked through her door didn't have private insurance. They had Medicaid, which means they qualified because they had almost nothing. They waited weeks for an appointment, and they were grateful when they got one. Everything in her life pointed one direction. 20 years of pointing toward helping people. The practice was real. The license was real. The patients were real. She used every one of them. Here's how the thing she exploited actually works. When a therapist sees a Medicaid patient, they write a clinical note, what was discussed, how the patient's doing, what the plan is, and they submit a claim tied to that patient's name and Medicaid number. Medicaid pays. The whole system runs on one assumption, that the session actually happened, that the note is real, that the signature on the paperwork belongs to the person whose name is on it. Ashley Cross knew that system better than almost anyone who ever sat across from her. She'd worked inside it for over a decade. She knew exactly what got looked at and what didn't. So picture the first time. Some ordinary afternoon in 2016, the Charlotte heat against the windows, the waiting room empty between appointments. She pulls up a real patient's information, a real name, a real Medicaid number, and she files a claim for a session that never happened, with a note describing a session that never happened. Medicaid pays it. Nobody calls. Nobody comes. Nobody asks a single question. So she does it again. And then the practice she spent a decade building quietly turns into something else. The machinery for a fraud that runs 5 years and bills more than $1.2 million for care nobody ever received. It worked on 3 levels. First, the identities. Sometimes she billed extra phantom sessions onto real patients who were actually coming in. And sometimes she went further. She spent money to buy the personal information of Medicaid recipients she had never met, people who never walked through her door, and billed in their names too. Second, the paperwork. Every fake claim needed a clinical note, so she had her own employees write them, fabricated notes for sessions that never occurred. Some patients later found out their signatures had been forged on documents they'd never seen. And third, this is the one that stopped the courtroom cold. There are 24 hours in a day. On some days, Ashley Cross billed South Carolina Medicaid for more than 19 hours of one-on-one individual counseling. 19 hours. One therapist, one patient at a time, alone in a room. That's no sleep, no breaks, no second patient overlapping. It's not possible. It's just what she submitted. And the fraud got so thick, so woven through everything, that investigators would later say it became impossible to tell the real claims from the fake ones. And a computer never would have stopped her. The system had been paying those impossible claims for 3 years without blinking. It took a person. In the late summer of 2019, a claims analyst doing a routine review for South Carolina Medicaid pulled up Odyssey Health Group and started reading the billing history. Most of what crossed that desk was ordinary, a clinic overcoding here and there. Then came a single day with more than 19 hours of individual therapy billed under one provider. You don't need a degree to catch that. You just need to be able to count. The analyst didn't close the file. The analyst escalated it. And in September 2019, South Carolina Medicaid opened a formal audit of her practice. Now, that was her exit. Right there. She could have stopped, lawyered up, cooperated. Instead, she handed the auditors fake patient records and false statements and tried to bury the fraud under more fraud. And while she was doing that, in the spring of 2020, she reached for one more thing: COVID relief. She filed a fraudulent PPP loan for Odyssey Health Group, lying about payroll. Then a second one for a company called Gucci International, a so-called event planning business owned by her boyfriend, who at that very moment was already under federal indictment himself. Together, those loans pulled in over $287,000. The federal case came together through 2023, and on the morning it ended, there was nothing dramatic about the building it ended in. Just an ordinary office on North Tryon Street, the same waiting room with the lavender smell and the little framed print about healing on the wall. It was a Friday. Patients were already there. An older woman with a folder in her lap. A man in his 30s staring at nothing. A teenage boy in a hoodie looking down at his shoes. 2 FBI agents came through the front door in plain clothes, badges on their belts. They stopped at the reception desk and said something quietly. The young woman behind it picked up the phone. And a few seconds later, a door at the end of the hallway opened, and Ashley Cross walked out, burgundy blazer, a file folder in her hand, moving at the same unhurried pace she'd moved through that hallway 1,000 times before. She saw the badges. She stopped. "Miss Cross, FBI, we need to speak with you about your practice. I work with vulnerable people. I help them. Are you going to come with us, ma'am? Am I being arrested?" "Yes, ma'am. Please put your hands behind your back." She set the folder on the desk. She didn't look at her receptionist. She didn't look at the 3 people in the chairs. She turned around, put her hands behind her back, and the cuffs closed at 10:24 in the morning. They walked her out through the front door, one agent on each side, past the patients, into the daylight. The door swung shut behind them, and the teenage boy looked back down at his shoes. She was charged federally with healthcare fraud, making false statements related to healthcare, money laundering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. And there was one more thing the government had on her. Out on bond, awaiting trial, Ashley Cross had called a witness in her own case and asked them to lie on the stand, to say she'd treated their children. The witness recorded the call. It went into evidence. Her trial ran 9 days. 25 witnesses. Over 600 documents. FBI agents had tracked down 21 of the Medicaid recipients whose names were on her claims and sat them down to confront what had been billed in their names. One of them, call her Denise, her real name's protected, had come to Odyssey Health Group in the fall of 2018. 44 years old, just lost her husband that spring, sudden, the kind of thing nobody sees coming. Wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating. Her sister finally told her, "You need to talk to somebody." She didn't have private insurance. She had Medicaid and a bus route and a name on a list. She went. She sat in that lavender-smelling waiting room. She had 6 sessions, and she'd later say they helped. She was grateful. She even sent a woman from her church there. When the FBI showed her the records, she found out Odyssey had billed for 41 sessions in her name. She'd been to 6. There were detailed clinical notes for 35 visits that never happened, on dates she'd never been in the building, and her signature was on the paperwork. She'd never signed any of it. She went quiet for a while. Then she said, "I went there because I needed help. I trusted her. I don't understand how a person does that to somebody who's already down." On May 17, 2024, the jury came back. Guilty. Every count. She was handcuffed and taken into custody right there, before her lawyer had finished gathering his papers. And at sentencing that November, the judge spoke to her directly before handing it down. "That license you held," the court said, "exists because the people who walk into a clinical social worker's office are, almost by definition, not at their strongest. They're grieving. They're anxious. They're children. The license is the state's promise to those people that the person across the room can be trusted. You didn't just break the law. You made that trust the tool of the crime." 135 months. 11 years and 3 months in federal prison. 3 years of supervised release after. And $481,000 in restitution. Odyssey Health Group is closed now. The waiting room with the lavender smell and the little framed print about healing, gone. The 21 people whose names she used never got made whole for what was taken from them, which wasn't only money. Her boyfriend's case moved through the system on its own track. And Ashley Cross, 5 licenses, a master's degree, a woman who said out loud that she valued honesty, will be in her 50s when she walks out. That teenage boy in the waiting room, the one staring at his shoes while they walked her past him in handcuffs? We don't know if he ever found another therapist. We just know he came there for help, and the person who was supposed to give it to him was being let out the door. She said she helped vulnerable people. She billed 19 hours of therapy in a single day. Same woman. That case will stay with me. But the one on your screen right now, the betrayal goes even deeper. Click it.